Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ronnie. I'm going to work on a topic today that I think I've actually avoided really thinking about money for most of my life because I have so many feelings around it, usually some kind of anxiety. I've known plenty of people who feel differently towards money: excitement, rage, calm, even comfort. But when I try to figure out what that word money stands for, it's actually a challenge to define my terms. This whole video may be little more than an attempt to find a functional definition of that word, money. For me, it brings up imagery of green paper, US currency, and coins, the form of money that I grew up with. Now, in 2026, it still exists, but I don't think cash is really king anymore. And we could make long discussions, probably, out of how good a king it really was. Now, if I type a celebrity's name in a search bar, it will regularly recommend net worth. And if I click on that, I'll be presented with a dollar sign, the S, the line through it, and some kind of number. And to some extent, after doing that, I actually feel empowered or entitled to speak about what that person is worth. On the other hand, I've heard people talk about how like a wrongful death payout to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars was unreasonable because that person, whilst alive, did not contribute that amount of value to their greater community or society. And this is the point where the emotions bleed into the logic, rationalization, and I hope to keep the two at the most even keel possible. But basically, I faced two conflicting situations where in the first, I believe I can speak about someone, what someone else is worth. In the second, I'm demanding, who are you to declare what someone else is worth? Money, it is what it is, right? It's confounding, it's emotional, and most of us really do not understand it. But we live in the real world of today where money pays rent and buys food, and we gotta work with it somehow. It's my personal opinion that is actually a very elevated conclusion to reach. But it's also my opinion that saying those words is simply too easy. And it doesn't require a person to look within at this currency that in fact can control and overwhelm a majority of a person's life and energy. I've said some key words here already, like currency, cash, worth, value, contribution, and energy. This is a wide spectrum of words to try and apply them all to one single concept of money. Even more so to make it applicable as a concept across all our human borders, like age, geography, cultural background, and especially once we add into the mix power. It's tough for me to get vulnerable on this topic. I'm gonna try. For me, it gets emotional. There's pride, there's the desire to protect my family. There's also a lopsided shame that lets me tell someone else being bad with money does not make you a bad person. And it refuses to let me internalize and accept that very same message for myself. In someone else's financial woes, I see opportunity and possibility abounding. When those same issues have me in their crosshairs, however, my first reaction is to retreat in shame. Luckily, by this point in my life, it's just my first reaction and no longer my only reaction. Nowadays, I apparently post videos about it. Cost of living. Once upon a time, I developed my first concept of finances long, long ago, probably single-digit age, which was that a person's annual income was equal to the value of their house. Even though I spent my first 8 years growing up in an apartment, I guess this philosophy only held space for homeowners. Forgive me, I was young. My mother, raising my brother and I as a single parent, was able to purchase a home in the early 90s, and it was obvious that this was a crowning achievement of hers. And I can only imagine, because today at 40, I still don't know yet what home ownership is like. Tell me to go buy a house, and it sounds the same as if you're telling me to go buy a nuclear power plant or a herd of zebras. I still don't know what she paid for that house, but I somewhere decided that it had cost $30,000, and therefore I also figured that my mother made $30,000 a year. And when I finally told her what I thought her annual income was, she actually laughed out loud at how far I was apparently overbidding. But that number got buried somewhere deep for me. And so I remember years later sitting on a friend's porch, this was during my college years, talking about our futures and not yet completely understanding that this endless sense of dread is actually part of the problem. Given that it had always been there, I had no reason to think it was anything peculiar, just another regular horror of being human. $30,000 a year. I told my friend, whatever I do for a job, if I can just, I'll be good. If I can just make $30,000 a year. And at the time, it really was hard for me to imagine ever needing that much money. And though I couldn't really say it or express it at the time, it was even harder for me to imagine being worth that much money. Now, it ended up happening about 2 or 3 years after graduation. I applied for and got my first job with a salary that met my magic number. It paid something like $31,000 or $32,000 a year. And the irony was not lost on me that I had set my goal on a number, and I only reached that number to find every other aspect of my life in unmanageable disarray. This was my third or fourth position with an organization that continuously wrote me up and promoted me, and wrote me up and promoted me, and wrote me up again and promoted me again. I was always starting a better position that I was even less qualified for or prepared to succeed at. At the time, my addictions were controlling my life to an extent that I still wasn't capable of admitting to or accepting. Um, I jumped around romantic relationships with very little consideration given to how well matched we really were, or how my degraded lifestyle could injure another person who thought they wanted to live with me. Without listing all of my qualifications, I was more miserable than ever now that I had reached my dream salary. Within a year of starting the position, I walked out on the job, on the apartment, on the car, on the relationship, and I embarked on my first geographical. That's the recovery term for trying to run away far enough that my problems won't be able to follow me. Spoiler alert, they could, and they did. But I actually want to shift focus here to a different aspect of what ensued. Because almost 3 years after running away, by that point I had gotten myself pretty well established in a new community and a new lifestyle. And I was tallying my books for the end of this year, and my income had barely crested $15,000. And somehow, with my income at half the magic number, I was actually far happier with my life than I had been 3 years prior when I was making the magic number. So all that was over 10 years ago. And I still found more and creative, different ways to continue running away from running away. And it's unbelievable how many layers deep such a practice can become, with one reasonable situation piling on top of the other, and solution on top of solution, all seeming perfectly reasonable, if not questionable and perhaps a bit extreme. But much to my dismay and great fortune, the truth and the consequence of all these decisions and solutions circled back around to me in the later half of my 30s, finally. To date, that job that I mentioned earlier with the magic number is still the highest salary I've ever received from any job I've worked. And so this is the question I want to wrap up this video with. How does my financial standing affect the message that I'm giving you? And how does it affect your receiving that message? One of my great inspirations to record and post videos has been the honesty of people who are scraping by financially but still believe they have a valuable message to convey, and they're recording and posting themselves spreading that message, even if it's not bringing them rampant riches or any money, period. So if I listen to a speaker talk about their ideas and practices, followed by the abundance which has come to them in turn, am I more likely to take on those practices? Am I more likely to compromise my principles in order to get what they have? Do they deserve more attention than the 26-year-old living out of their car, or the 50-year-old homeless person who loves their life? I do believe I have something worth saying, even though my income at 40 still qualifies me for food stamps. I don't know how a change in my net worth would change my message because it hasn't really occurred to me yet. Someone looked at my annual income once and said, they spend that much a year on wine. Thanks. I know there are many people who would work way longer and harder than I do to make the amount of money I'm currently making, no matter how small I or anyone else might think that amount of money is. So tell me, please, where do you stand, for today at least? What do you picture when you think about money? How do you use those different words we mentioned, like currency, cash, value, worth, contribution, energy? What other words do you commonly associate with the topic of money? Leave your 2 cents in the comments. Until next time, cálmate, turista.